sites. And today we're going to be discussing tips on how to manage your job sites for theft and crime and how to work with the police and city to keep your workplaces safe. This particular program is going to be different than what we've done in the past. There is no PowerPoint presentation. This will be more of a discussion. So we are going to hear an intro, but we also are looking for communication and participation by everybody in the group with questions, comments, situations, and see where it takes us today. More or less an open forum after we go through the intro. And this is going to be brought to you by Mark Solomon, who is the crime prevention coordinator with the Seattle Police Department, and also Tom Van Bronckhorst, who is the strategic advisor for encampments and special teams with the city of Seattle for Seattle Parks and Recreations. Mark and Tom, we are thankful to have you taking time out of your day to provide us information and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Welcome.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for having us today. So, in terms of introductions, I'm Mark Solomon. I'm one of the crime prevention coordinators with the Seattle Police Department. I primarily serve the South Precinct area of Seattle, and I've been in that role since last century. Anyway, a lot of what I do or have done is community education and engagement, and had an opportunity to work with. Um, Hydromax, Puget Sound Energy, City Light, Seattle Public Utilities and Department of Transportation on safety and security issues while they are out in the field. So that's some of what I'm going to be bringing to you today. Um, as was said, we don't have a set PowerPoint. I want to be here as a resource for you and answer any questions that you may have about safety and security out in the field and provide maybe you have some what if scenarios, or maybe you have some scenarios of things you've actually experienced and want to discuss how uh, certain situations may be handled or should be handled. So I'm going to stop talking and let Tom introduce himself.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Tom Van Bronckhorst. I'm with the City of Seattle Unified Care Team out of the mayor's office. And the Unified Care Team is a group of all city departments that have a part of the responsibility for homelessness response in the city of Seattle. And our primary function is to ensure that all Seattle public spaces, our sidewalks, our parks, the street right of ways are all open and safe and accessible to everyone. We work in coordination with other partner organizations, including WASDOT, for on encampments that might be um, on WASDOT right of way. We also coordinate with other departments. We're not a first responding organization, so we do not respond to any immediate urgent issues that might be coming up that might be violent or might have, those are handled by the police department and the fire department. But we do work on resolution of encampments. We have a prioritization uh, uh, plan that we go through in identifying which ones are dealt with and when and how those are dealt with. We have our rules that guide us and how we do those resolutions. And so it can be kind of complex. But I can tell you that for people in the construction industry, there are several things that we can do to prioritize encampments that are impacting your construction projects. And so I'll be happy to talk about that more as we kind of go on down the way.
Yep. And one of the things that a couple things I'll throw out. One is um, one of the biggest issues I find at construction sites is securing your stuff. Whether it's your tools, your materials, safeguarding the trucks. I have seen incidents where crews have been out doing some work, and you've had some rando guy come through and rummage through a worker's truck because the truck was unlocked. Uh, get keys. Seeing equipment that's left on a site overnight that's been unsecured, and then someone comes along and just snatches it up. Now, it's very easy to say that, yeah, it's all the homeless guys who are doing this stuff. Well, no, you have people that actually have addresses that are committing these crimes too. So one thing we want to be clear about is just because someone is homeless doesn't mean they're a criminal. Yet we know that there are folks out there who are trying to survive on the street. We know a lot of folks who are out there that are homeless are also dealing with some mental illness issues. They're dealing with substance abuse issues. And we know that a lot of them are armed with something, whether it's a box cutter, knife, screwdriver, something. And they're usually armed for their protection because living on the street is dangerous. So oftentimes the homeless individuals that SPD comes across are armed with something. And I bring that up to let you all know that if you're dealing with someone who is unsheltered, chances are they're going to have some kind of weapon on them. So keep that in mind when you're encountering someone. Um, I would also say that if you are encountering someone that seems to be uh, in crisis, having a mental episode, um, normally when we're talking about personal safety, we talk about having a safe distance between you and the other person, having a reactionary distance, if you will, as well as um, cover, something between you and the other person. If you're dealing with somebody who's mentally ill, you probably want to double that distance, not necessarily for just for your safety, but for their comfort. Because what may be a normal distance between me and Tom, if I'm having an episode, I want more space from, he's too close to me. He could be 20 feet away and too close. Okay. So that's a caution that I would throw out there too. And I know my good friend Tanisha is on the line, and she was a UW, police officer before she transitioned to Sound Transit. So she might be able to provide some additional information, insight on that as well, in terms of how do you deal with people who are mentally unstable. So putting you on the spot, Tanisha.
Oh, Mark, I love it. Thank you. Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good. I think the main thing, if I were to jump in here ad hoc here real quick on the spot, is your safety is number one. I suggest that, you be aware of your surroundings at all times, be alert and aware. And when you're coming into a site, especially if it's been closed over the weekend or the evening, to have your teams be prepared to just take a look around, see what's going on as you come in, notice things like broken locks, booted in gates, things that seem out of place from where you left it when you closed up shop. Stay afar, observe, and call 911. And don't be frustrated. They're going to ask you if it's an emergency or non-emergency. If you're inside a site and you see someone inside a site, that is an emergency. If it's fenced off and there's signing or signage that says this is closed, subject to prosecution, yeah, there's still laws. How the court deals with that is very different these days, but that's a burglary. If you're inside a closed fence area, that's a felony. So that is an emergency. There's a burglary in progress. My recommendation is you keep your distance. You get information in your brain about what that person looks like.
That number into my.
And get a physical description. Know your address. All your construction sites should have a sign that says this is the temporary construction address until the city gives you an exact parcel address for the finished project. Know what that is, have it posted everywhere. Some of you guys have gate areas like gate 1, 2, 3, etc. to tell police or responding emergency responders what gate to meet you at. And keep your distance and keep information going. There's no reason to interrupt that person. No one's life is worth a DeWalt saw or things like that. We all have insurance. Make sure that's up to date.
That's a great truck.
But get information about what that person looks like, where they're at, and then stay somewhere safe and wait for law enforcement to come. If they say they're not going to come, ask for a solution on what you're supposed to do in the meantime, because you got to get open for shop. You got to get starting to work. Got to get your teams in there to start work.
All right. Thanks, Tanisha. Again, she and I have worked together so many years, again, going to way back to last century. And I just want to echo everything she said. So, those are the basics. Um, so, at this point, I'm ready to open up for questions, and I see that Steve has his hand up.
One question I have for you is the people that are on the line here working in multitude of different areas and jurisdictions and so on and so forth, but on a very high level, what can contractors do to try and prevent people from setting up on their fence lines, in their rented right-of-ways, to try and get some distance from the homeless population and their workers, because the workers that are coming into work can be extremely frustrated when now they have to cross over this, and it's quote unquote disrupting their day. So anything that you can add is a good first step for contractors.
Wow. So you're talking about, how do you prevent them from setting up next to your site in the first place?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
one thing that
go ahead.
one thing I would suggest is if you have control of the right of way for some sort of lay down area, that's one way to use that. I know that it's risky because then you put whatever that material is that you're laying down at risk for potential theft. But if it's some of the larger stuff and you can secure it, that may be a way to prevent tent encampment from coming next to your sight line, next to your construction site property line. Also
And
looking at other things that you can put in that space. If you trucks, vehicles,
ecology
large things,
blocks.
echo blocks if they're not. Now, check with your local jurisdiction on what's allowed, and but if you have site control, that should be something that you can
Right.
explore.
And the reason we're kind of hesitant about the echo blocks is we've seen neighborhoods that put them up. We're not exactly sure who put them up, but our Department of Transportation does not like that because you're taking away street parking and usability. So that's one of the reasons we're just saying, be mindful of what you do, check with your local jurisdiction. And I would also say work with your local law enforcement agency, right? So, like I said, Tom and I work closely together. I've done a lot of work with our construction folks, our city folks, but maybe you got a project in Tukwila. Well, I got a point of contact in Tukwila you can talk to. Renton, got a point of contact in Renton. You're down in Olympia. Yeah, I got Rebecca and Margot down there. So, we can get you connected to other resources if you happen to be working in other areas. So, okay, question from Dan: how do you handle a person stealing right in front of your crew? Well, again, first, secure your stuff as best you can. Okay, and if you do have some rando guy who's stealing something out of the back of your pickup, um, use the power of your voice. Hey, what are you doing? Drop that. Okay. A lot of times, if someone knows that they've been seen, trying to commit a crime, they'll usually stop. Oftentimes, they'll stop. If the person doesn't stop, again, it's a tool, it's property. Um, get the good description of what was taken, get the description of the person, and report it as soon as possible. Should you chase the guy down? Not necessarily, because you don't know if that person has partners or accomplices waiting for him. You don't know what you're going to be getting yourself into, and you're separating yourself from the rest of your team. So I'd say, no, don't chase him. It is just property. Report it as quickly as possible, but do what you can to prevent those items from being taken in the first place. Again, secure them as best you can. And I would also recommend that any equipment that you have it clearly marked and identified. Maybe etch it with the name of your business, with the business ID number. So if they're going to try to take that tool and oftentimes sell it at another construction site or take it to a pawn shop. It's got your business name, it's got your tax ID number, on the tool itself. Going to make it much more difficult for them to offload that thing and get cash for it. Other questions, comments, concerns, anything that you all have come across that you want to share with the group?
Yeah, I will actually share something with the group. This is something that may be controversial to many, but it is something that we have encountered over the years, and I have taught this in my hazardous waste operations and emergency response classes. This occurred approximately 15 years ago. While working on the Washington State Convention Center, we found out why it is a necessity to secure our facilities with regard to honey buckets and equivalent.
Yep.
What we found is that folks were residing in those honey buckets overnight. And in addition, there was quite a bit of drug use with sharps that would be in the honey buckets and stored in the honey buckets for maybe later use or potential an area of disposal. After closer investigation in the honey buckets, we started recognizing that those who were using needles for drug use would essentially have pressure applied to the arm or the point of injection, whereas blood splatter would be brown, what appeared to be mud, but it was not mud. When blood dries, it dries very brown. We would find that in micro droplets and larger spots throughout those honey buckets. In addition, we started finding that where the toilet paper rolls, where the plastic or PVC comes over to protect the toilet paper rolls, we were finding that needles had been stored in a little groove behind the toilet paper rolls. And even after closer investigation, we also found tiny blood spots on the actual toilet paper rolls themselves from potential needles being cleaned. At which point we went, whoa, hold the phone. We really got to start taking a closer look at this and making sure that we have these facilities secured and that we do have a closer investigation of those facilities. And, I hate to say it, but toilet paper rolls, I mean, the last thing we want to do is have workers coming onto site and having somebody with bloodborne pathogens remaining on those toilet paper rolls within that past 24 hours, which is still a potential for bloodborne pathogens to survive. So I think it is very important for folks out there to really take a look at that and also be educating site personnel about that, because when you go into a facility, it should be a safe place and you shouldn't have fear of cross-contamination of bloodborne pathogens or a potential sharp. So it is definitely something that we have to pay conscious mind to, especially in metropolitan areas where we do see a significant increase in sharps and drug use of that nature. Do you guys have any comments or recommendations or any information with regard to that you have seen that can essentially verify that what we saw is not just a one-time occurrence, because we most definitely have seen it in a variety of places? Thank you.
Yeah, during the pandemic, I was worked on setting up hygiene stations to service encampments in an effort to suppress the spread of COVID. And in doing so, we found one thing that you did, everything that you just mentioned, plus we had deployed hand sanitizer into those units, and the sanitizer was actually being used as an accelerant. So we ended up removing those. One of the other things that we have done at those hygiene at the porta potties essentially is putting in sharps containers. So strapping them to the wall. So if you do have a situation, people do have a place to put it, and doing regular cleans, and and we've had quite a few porta potties burn to the ground quite quickly in those situations. I would suggest that you, if keep them off the right of way and interior, keep them more interior and secured. Yeah.
Excellent. That is very good information. And also to piggyback on that, and I'd like to hear from the group as well, is what have your organizations done with regard to Sharps policies, needle removals? I mean, we have found it, we found needle disposal sites. And what I mean is maybe a 50-yard stretch of arborvitae or similar shrubs that we have had to clear and grub, where we might find anywhere from 300 to 1,000 needles. And it's a very quick, we recognize it quickly when we see it, when we start removing different product or moving material around. And what are organizations that are part of this meeting today doing to mitigate that and ensure worker safety on the job site? Anybody can chime in.
Steve Andrews here. Number one thing I'm going to say there is it has to be a continuing education, reminding people just because we've now brought in a track hoe, a bulldozer, or anything else to move dirt around does not mean that an inch below that dirt that looks all nice and clean is not needles. And have your people aware that I hate to simplify it as much, but this is not a, get garbed up in puncture resistant material all over your body. It is a matter of not handling the punctures and the sharps and different items with your hands, using pliers, simple pliers that most carpenters or electricians and iron workers carry in their pockets and their toolboxes, is to have a program. And I think one of the things that we sometimes forget about is Tom pointed out, having Sharps containers in Santa cans is we go into industrial environments, and I'll pick on the big airplane manufacturer in the area. Virtually in every single one of their restrooms, they have a Sharps container, not necessarily because they have a homeless issue, but because of people that are using them for their benefit don't have a place to put them. They end up in the garbage cans, or they end up in the toilets, or they end up in the Santa cans. So having a place to put things, having a program in place, and the simple thing of, once every few months bringing it up at your weekly safety meeting. Don't forget to not push your hands down in garbage cans. Simple little things like that is what we try and do.
Yeah, Dale Sharp here, if I may. Echoing what Steve just said, elevating people's awareness and making sure that their heads on a swivel, no matter whether they're wading through the brush or walking across clear dirt, is super important and can't be emphasized enough, in my opinion. And as far as a container goes, we're always going to be able to find a sturdy plastic container. And like Steve said, grab the pliers, pick it up, put it in that sturdy plastic container, put a piece of tape across the front of it and write in big, bold letters, Sharps. And that way it can get into the garbage and not hurt anybody later on down the road.
So, Mark, I see a couple questions from the chat box. We are seeing professional theft gangs that are targeting specific types of high-value materials. Are your groups aware of these, and are they being tracked?
What I see more of is, organized retail theft from like Home Depot, Lowe's, those kind of things. In terms of, organized gangs that are targeting construction sites. When I see construction site thefts, whether it's whether it's a remodel or a new construction, what I see being taken out of there is copper, appliances, and tools, and oftentimes those tools get wind up trying to be sold at another construction site. So those tend to be the kind of things that I see. I'm not seeing organized gangs going after front loaders to try to haul those off. Again, it's the small stuff that's portable that can easily be transported and also easily sold. That's more of what I see.
Yeah, there was one incident that happened maybe about a year ago where there was an organized group of people who clearly had inside information and experience in the construction industry. And these were not homeless people, because there's two types of these things. There's the people who drift on and drift off of a construction site. The drifters will grab, loose tools. This group in particular targeted a very specific kind of electrical apparatus that went into the basement portion in a locked area. And it was a very expensive piece of material. And at that time, when those were being installed, the construction companies had inadequate, or were not expecting it, and had inadequate security at the time. I think since then you've seen them really step it up when they're doing those particular installations of these. I wish I knew what it was, but it was like electrical circuit box type stuff that they improve their security posture.
So the next question is, what is a safe way to approach someone encamped on your site?
Well, okay, from my standpoint, I would say if you got somebody who's encamped on your site, it probably took them some time to get established. I mean, if you're there on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, someone's camped there, just go to the person and say, "Hey, man, we're working. You're gonna have to move," right? And if they refuse to move, then that's where you can call your local law enforcement to help move that person along, because now they're trespassing. Usually, when someone is asked to move along, they usually do. They usually don't put up too much of a fuss. Now, if they do put up a fuss, again, safety first, right? Your safety is more important than anything else. Put some distance between you and that person. Put some physical thing between you and that person. And again, call us. Okay. Tom, got anything to add to that?
No, I would approach them carefully and try and be, at least in the initial stages, try and be helpful, try and understand what's happening and what they might need. Maybe there's something you can offer to move them along quicker, whatever that is, I'm not sure. And then if things become a little bit more agitated or hostile, then all the things that Mark said.
And keep in mind that how I think about how we communicate. 75% of what we communicate is our body language. Okay, 28% is our 68 is body language. The 20 something is tone of voice. Only 7% of what we say is our words. So when you're approaching anybody, be mindful of what your body is communicating to that person, because you may think that your words are communicating your message, but no, your body is communicating that message, right? Speak an even tone of voice. Don't sound angry if you're trying to get somebody to voluntarily comply with what you want them to do. I would also say that I heard this: never in the history of calm down has anyone calmed down when told calm down, right? So you tell someone you need to calm down. Have you ever done that? Okay, so be mindful of what it is that you're saying to the person as well. Do not touch them. Okay, there's a certain way that officers approach people who are living on the street, and it's not approaching them at where their head is. It's coming to them where their feet are and doing it from a distance. And if there is a touch, there's going to be a wiggle of the toe, right? But even then, I'd say don't touch them. Okay. Let's see, in terms of a limit as to how long a structure is allowed to be on the street, Tom, that's up your alley.
What's the question?
Is there a limit in terms of how long a tent / structure is going to be allowed in a public / right of way abutting another structure?
Yeah, in the city of Seattle, which is going to be different than a lot of the jurisdictions you might be in, but in the city of Seattle, it can range if a tent, in terms of timeline and how long an encampment can exist on a right of way or in a public space. So it varies greatly. If there is a tent blocking a sidewalk or blocking, we can have that removed quicker, more immediately. Usually we do give them 24 hours, depending on the situation. If there's an intent encampment on public right of way that isn't blocking and isn't a problem, because we're required to offer them alternative shelter before making a move or asking them to move. Sometimes that oftentimes delays, and so if a removal. And so if a tent encampment is there and there's, oftentimes they can be there for an extended period, particularly if they're not doing anything, and if we don't have alternate shelter to offer them. Okay, this is where I want to put in a plug for the construction industry in the city of Seattle. If you're experiencing an encampment adjacent on public right of way or on public property adjacent to your construction site that is impeding your progress or keeping you from moving forward with your construction activities, that will help elevate and help give a higher priority to for removal of that encampment so that your work can continue. So if you're in the city of Seattle, we've had several examples of this happening where we've been able to work much quicker to ensure that an encampment was removed so that construction could continue forward. And that includes essentially the right of way where they were doing laydown or needing to put in heavy equipment in order to begin a construction. That's oftentimes when this is happening, is at the early stages of development. But even saying that, fast means in the world of homelessness removal in the city of Seattle, fast can take several weeks. So as you're looking at your sites in advance of when you begin, if you're seeing encampments around or on, but particularly around, make sure that you report those through the Find It Fix It app, or you can email myself, or you can email the Unified Care Team at unifiedcareteam at seattle.gov, and make sure that we're aware of it so that we can work with you to have that removed in a timely fashion so that you're able to go and start your work. If it's on private property, we can advise you, but the city will not, the city of Seattle will not engage on removals on private property. But we can walk you through what we would do and what you could do, but what you're not required to do necessarily. Since it is private property, you basically can just remove people, ask them to move, and if they don't, you can remove them.
I know we're just about at time, or we're at time, and I saw something in the chat about reaching out to us for any issues outside of this, or maybe any follow-ups. So I did put my contact information in the chat. Do feel free to reach out to me if I can be of further resource to you. And again, at that, I'll stop talking.
We could keep going as long as people are interested and as long as you guys have the time. I think it's such a topical subject that it would be great to at least get through the questions, and if anybody else has questions, if you guys are willing.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm good for another hour and a half.
Let's keep going. Okay, next question. What is the legal repercussion of one of the indigents getting injured while trespassing on the job site?
That's something that I would say, since I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV, I would actually ask you all to check with your legal counsel on that. Because the way I look at it is, okay, dude's on my property doing something he shouldn't be doing, and if he gets injured, that's on him. But that's me. Okay. So I would say, yeah, definitely check with your legal, folks as to what they would advise. Okay. Let's see. Other questions, statements. Um, okay, something about Good Samaritan and responding with Narcan. Yeah, they correct. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, and Tanisha may want to lay on uh, weigh in on this as well. But it's my understanding that under the Good Samaritan law, if you're trying to render aid to somebody, and say it doesn't go well, um, you're not liable for what went wrong. You're trying to provide assistance. So if you're trying to administer Narcan and the Narcan doesn't take, you're not responsible for that person's OD. You're again trying to help that person survive a situation.
Yeah, I
So,
believe
Dan,
that's
do
true
I
in the
have that
city.
right?
Yeah, I believe that's true in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
That's a state law.
Mhm.
Maybe Tanisha has more.
Yeah.
You are correct. The main thing you want to make sure is that your team's out there, whether you're a private construction business or a mini mart or what have you, that you have policies on what that is and what you can carry so that you don't violate policy. But law is the bigger
Mhm.
thing and it protects you. And again, I don't speak for Sound Transit on this topic, even though I'm working there today and I no longer work in law enforcement, but the law applies to all of us. If you're trying to save a life, you do the very best you can, and this law in the link in the chat, I added that protects you.
Great. Thank you.
I saw in the comment there was a comment about locking porta potties and the fact that when you have a porta potty and you end up locking it, sometimes people heavily vandalize the porta potty. And we struggled with this in the city of Seattle and ended up determining that we weren't going to lock porta potties, but just deal with the cleanup and the lesser cleanup than if because people who see porta potties and then find them locked will be more aggressive toward them unless those are further back off the street inside the construction, deep inside the construction area, somewhere protected.
Because as you know, I think there's been a lot of press about where do people in Seattle go to the bathroom. There's not a whole lot of places, So, yeah, and I myself, when I've come, when I've had to perform a bodily function and there was nowhere to do it, and I see a porta potty and it's locked, it's like, why even have this here, right? So I, share that same sentiment that, yeah, people get frustrated because they can't use it. They may vandalize it. So, yeah, let's focus on the cleaning. Having the sharps containers in there. But the whole thing about the sanitizers being used as an accelerant. Okay, what else could be done? In terms of hand sanitation. Is that Steve with your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to add another comment, and that is when you start seeing theft on your job site, also look at what is being taken, because believe it or not, some of the thefts that are being done, when you see things like generators and you see welding machines and you see extension cords and lights, those are being used by the local encampment. They are not being resold. And so be aware that when you start seeing those types of items that are moving from your job, they're using it for personal comfort in their encampment.
Yeah, propane tanks.
Yep,
A lot of
gas,
propane
tanks, even batteries for the
Yep, batteries. Yep,
equipment.
wooden pallets.
Yep. So it's not always resell. It is a case, and I will tell you,
Yep.
I dealt with a contractor that a group of workers then went and removed their stuff back, and not a good idea, but you have to be prepared for that it will happen with some of these individually minded construction workers.
Yes, and I don't know if we touched on it enough, but report. If you have an incident at at a site, call 911. If you have theft, call 911. Um, we know there's a lot of crime that occurs that goes unreported in the city, and I'm sure it's not just in Seattle. So law enforcement is driven by data. If you don't tell us, we don't know. And if you don't call us, we ain't coming. Right. And that's the bottom line. So, I know we're about to have a huge project happening here in Seattle in the Rainier Valley area around MLK and Rainier that Sound Transit's going to do with some sort of a bike facility that's coming into place. So they reached out to me, as Department of Transportation reached out and said, "Hey, here's what we got going on, and here's what we're going to do." And of course, the questions I had was, "Okay, when are you going to start? What kind of gear are you going to have? Where are you going to store your gear? How are you going to secure your gear? And have you let local law enforcement know because of the impact of the traffic patterns of what it is that you're looking at doing?" Because if you're taking away traffic on Rainier for a significant amount of time, that's going to affect how officers get to and from various calls. Okay, it's going to affect response times. So it's like, ooh, okay, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, you need to think about that. So definitely having some coordination between where you're working and local law enforcement so that we can see what are the potential impacts of what you've got going on. Another thing that we provide as crime prevention coordinators is site assessments. I've been to a number of construction sites, whether it's new apartment construction or just road. It's like, hey, here's what we got going on. Can you make any recommendations for us in terms of safety and security? And say, absolutely, yeah. Here's what I recommend you do in terms of your lighting. Here's what I recommend you do in terms of storing your tools and securing your stuff. Uh, here's some personal safety tips for you folks who are out there on the street. So that is a resource for you as well. We are here as a resource for you.
Hey, Tom. So, time for truth. Are we making progress? And I'm not saying this facetiously. I'm just saying, where are we at with the homeless population? Is it growing?
Well, yeah, in
Is it
terms of
steady?
in terms of sheer numbers, it's a real challenging thing. There was a story in the local press, I think the Seattle Times, on the increasing number of homelessness, despite all the efforts that are being put forward. And there's many reasons for that. I think you can go and look at what those might be. But in terms of sheer numbers, it's really challenging, and it's going to be with us for a while. In terms of how we're responding to it, we're constantly changing how we're responding to homelessness in order to meet needs of not only those who are living outside, but also meet the needs of the community members who are impacted by the by homelessness in general. So
It seems to me, at least in our neighborhood, that there's been progress. Certainly with the RVs, and so we've definitely seen some progress. And I know it's a situation that's hard to manage, and you guys are doing a great job. But one last question for Mark: staffing.
Yeah, next question.
I think it's
Staffing is bad.
useful
I'm
for
not gonna
everybody
deny it.
just to
Staffing is bad.
know what the truth is. And it's not right or wrong, it's just what it is. And so when you say reporting is important, it is for data collection, no doubt about it. But staffing is
a challenge, and it's a
Yeah.
challenge not only for Seattle but for most law enforcement agencies around the country. There's people just don't want to get into this profession. And yes, Seattle has lost at least 300 officers in the past 3 years. We are down to about 900 deployable officers citywide. And for a city our size, let's put it this way: Boston, less square miles, less population. They have like 2,200 officers. We have 900. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of things we can't do, and it does mean that we do have to prioritize life safety calls over everything else. So yeah, your front loader getting stolen, we'll get to it. We're more concerned about the fight disturbance. We're more concerned about the, 20 shots that were fired in Rainier Beach last night. We're more concerned about the domestic violence incident. Your circulating saw getting stolen, big deal. I mean, when it comes right down to it. Um, and that's because we don't have the resources to prioritize property crimes. That's why we do depend on you all to do what you can to prevent it and report it. Because again, if you don't tell us, we're not going to know. And we deploy our resources based on calls for service and based on the information we get, from community. So if you got something going on, let us know. If you're having an issue at a particular site, let us know so that we can respond to it, especially if it's a location where you're trying to get some work done and you've got people who are interfering with that work and threatening your employees and stealing your stuff. We're going to respond to those, right?
Sure.
So,
Sure. Well, I think it's
but
great
again,
to
you
have
got
you
to
as
tell us.
it's great to have you as a resource for site safety evaluations, and so that's really helpful. And I know Tom's been very helpful with a situation out near where I live, and it is an ongoing effort. It's just
Where do you
but
live, Brian?
I live right at the north end of Magnuson Park, right by
Ah,
NOAA, right by
gotcha.
NOAA. So,
Oh yeah,
but anyway, I appreciate the truthfulness, and I think it's valuable for us to know the general state of affairs. And I certainly appreciate all the time and effort you guys have put into trying to keep it at least at bay.
all right.
Rhett, you have the con.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any other questions for these gentlemen or conversations? Yes, thank you very much. Let me pull up the end of the presentation here for you. We are greatly thankful for Mark and Tom. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day. We've gone through the questions, but what I'd like to point out is that next summit is February 14th, 2024. And that happens to be Valentine's Day. So look out for those flying arrows of love while you join us for our next topic, which will be posted and emailed your direction. And until then, everybody have a great day. Work smart, be safe, keep up the good work, and let's make 2024 great. Thank you.
Rhett,
Yes.
could you back it up a couple slides to the guest speaker, if you'd be so kind?
Yes, just one moment.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. You should see it. Can you guys see it on your end?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rhett.
Yeah, you bet.